A record 20.5 million Americans lost their jobs in April, bringing the national unemployment rate to 14.7%. That's the highest level since the Great Depression. John Friedman is a professor of economics and international and public affairs at Brown University. He's also the founding co-director of Opportunity Insights at Harvard University. John, we haven't seen numbers like this in some 90 years. How significant a drop is this, and how does it compare to other tumultuous times in our nation's history?
Well, the numbers that we saw this morning are just catastrophic. You mentioned that the unemployment rate has never been this high since the Great Depression. And honestly, but for a bunch of technical issues, it actually probably should be another 4 or 5% higher. You mentioned that 20.5 million jobs were lost in the past month. We've never lost more than 1 million jobs in a month before. And the entire Great Recession 10 years ago or so, we only lost 10 million jobs. So any way you put it, this is an incredibly large set of numbers.
So many people are suffering right now. What are some of the industries that have really been the hardest hit by the pandemic?
So I think it will come no surprise that leisure and hospitality has been the industry that's been most heavily affected. 7.7 million jobs in that industry. That's nearly half of all jobs destroyed in the last month. Retail trade also has been incredibly hard hit. But I think the thing that you see when you look more broadly in the numbers is that actually industries all over the place are suffering maybe somewhat smaller, but still very, very serious losses. So more than 1 million job losses in manufacturing, nearly 1 million jobs lost in construction. There's really no sector of the economy that's escaped this particular crisis.
John, I wonder if I know that there will be lasting effects, but I'm wondering if any of these industries will be likely to bounce back when the country does in fact reopen.
Well, I think that the first thing to remember is that while we're all very excited to learn about this number this morning, it's actually a month old. This was measured in a survey about a month ago. And we know that there have been another 11 million claims for unemployment insurance filed since then. And so I think that we really only yet to realize the depths of this particular crisis. Now, I think the stimulus package so far has been helping to support spending in the economy, especially among lower income households. But recently, some of the states that have been trying to reopen, like Georgia, even though they're back open again, there's really been no noticeable increase in spending or employment. Lots of small businesses are still closed. And so I think before the economy is going to be able to reopen, we're going to have to give people the confidence that they can go back outside and resume some part of their daily lives without being scared of getting sick.
So break it down for us a little bit more. Tell us what this picture looks like when we look at unemployment by race and gender.
Yeah, so again, this has been an incredibly broad hit across the board, but we see that unemployment is higher now for women by a few percentage points. It's also high for workers of color. Black workers and especially Hispanic workers have higher unemployment numbers as you see with your figures there. So I think, as we're seeing in past recessions, unfortunately, it is the most vulnerable populations in the U.S., not just by race and gender, but also we've seen larger employment losses among lower income households. And so we really need to think carefully from a policy perspective now about how we can support all these families throughout the crisis that is going to follow.
And do you have ideas about how our government and our policymakers can be better supporting these families that have been really struggling?
So I think the stimulus payments so far that went out have been doing a good job in supporting spending. We saw spending was down about 30% before the stimulus checks came out, and it didn't bounce back up to exactly where it was, but it went up significantly when those stimulus checks came out. They're going to run out, though, sometime soon. And so especially as we see this crisis is not going to pass anytime quickly, businesses continue to pull back on job postings, suggesting that they think this crisis is going to last a long time. And even when it does lift, those businesses may be trying to do more with fewer employees. And so those jobs may not all come back. And so I think another round of stimulus is going to be essential. But we may need to think a little bit more about how to target that stimulus to make sure that exactly those families who need it are getting the help.
Important lessons. John Friedman, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.